Yeah, I think when I think of targeting, and again, I don't know how accurate the stat is, but I'm sure everyone's seen it. Of the 95% of people aren't in market to buy your software, and 5% are. Um, Whether that's 95 or 85 or 80. I think thinking that way though is very helpful because it does kind of split your marketing efforts a little bit. You talked about like running demo ads on LinkedIn. It's like if you're just blindly going after your ICP, like tell the VP of marketing, and so I'm just at SaaS companies and I'm just going to run these demo request ads at this audience. Well, if there's 100 people in that audience that I'm going after and I have $100, I'm spending $1 on every single person to put this offer in front of them. Well, if 95% of them just bought HubSpot a month or two ago and they're in a year-long contract, I'm wasting 95 of my dollars putting ads in front of them that they're not going to engage with. And so I think one of the things I think to try to get to is how do you identify maybe people who are in market? And that's where I think like some of the intent data, and I know intent data is kind of all over the place depending, and everyone calls everything intent data these days. But I think trying to figure out like, are there good intent signals, whether it be G2 intent, whether it be hiring signals, maybe where they're hiring a VP of ops. So that would be a good indicator, whether it's adjacent technology. So you could use like a purple sonar or something like that to try to figure out like what technology is this company using? When did they install it potentially? One of the plays we were in at Help Scout was we looked at people's websites and we used Purple Sonar to scrape basically who had Zendesk, but also who installed the Zendesk pixel or tag on their site 9 months ago, because they're coming up for renewal in 3 months. So that's a good audience for us to put those types of offers in front of. And then I think the other bucket of people is they're not going to convert right away. That's not to say they won't ever convert, but I think that's where some of the brand stuff, some of the content, podcasts, that's where that becomes super valuable, where people just start engaging more and more with their company. And the example I used to give was like, if you were to buy a call recorder, like, which ones would you shortlist? And everyone always says like Gong. Well, it's not because they've ever used Gong before. It's just because they see Gong's content and thought leadership all over the place, and it's like the standard name, right? The same thing with Drift before with chatbots. So I think like building that brand and doing those things go a long way. So when it is time to make a decision, you're quickly on the short list of companies they're considering. So, and from targeting standpoint, I think splitting the audience a lot, and I think really trying to figure out what are the signals that maybe someone would be buying, and how do you try to like act upon those things.
I'll add from a different perspective, as I'm not sure if this is helpful, but I feel like one of the things in my experience that has helped with like starting a short list of who, like if this is not an exercise you've done, you don't know who your best customer is. One of the resources I'd recommend, it's a positioning research or resource, but April Dunford's book on positioning has been really helpful to me. So I ran this exercise at an agency when I ran marketing there like a few years ago. And then we recently did it at Databox. And basically she walks you through this framework. Go listen to her podcast and read her book for the details. But basically it's like determine what makes a best customer to you. So it could be like for us, we looked at like, okay, who paid above average, who was on the higher, April Dunford. April Dunford was her name. Basically, like we looked at, okay, who's on higher tier plans, who pays us more than average. Then we set things like who retained a long time. So if average customers churn an X amount, who retained maybe 12 months beyond that. And we just made a list, like not anything crazy. You don't want to like over engineer, but just like what makes a good customer to you. And in the course of your business, chances are that if you've been around for any length of time, you've got better customers and more average customers. And so when you start to really dive in and find out people that are staying extra long, they're retaining longer, they're paying you above average, what we did that was really helpful was you come away with two things. One, you make a short list of firmographic qualities. So like you look for any common trends or abnormalities that catch your eye. So for example, oh, interesting, it's all schools, or it's schools and banks. Like we serve all these customers, but when we look at the ones that have stuck around for 3 years, not 1 year, and pay us $100 a month more than average, or $1,000 a month more than average, or they close in half the amount of time, they're all from this one industry, or they're smaller businesses where the other ones are bigger. Like, so look at company size, look at industry, look at the job title of the person who bought from you, and see if there's any commonalities there. and look at those firmographically. Then what was really killer was we got on the phone with 20 of them. And April will walk you through how to conduct these interviews. You can email me at jeremiah@databox.com. I'll send you our write-up of what we did. You can follow what we did. Basically, you walk through this like short 20-minute interview, and it gets at like, why did they choose you above everyone else? Like, and you start to identify like, oh, there was this like one feature we have that we thought was average, but is a game changer in the education space, or like they're using it for this thing we didn't realize. And what you'll quickly realize is you can come away with a short list of either firmographic things that make your best customer or qualitative things that make your best customer. It might not be a standard industry or company size, but it might be people that really want blank or really value X. Or for Databox, we're not much value to you if you only have like 2 tools to integrate. But if you have like 5, 10 plus pieces of software that you want to view in one place, all of a sudden we're more valuable to you. And then that would refine some of your targeting.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because when I was at Help Scout, we brought in April to do a workshop.
Oh, no way.
Just that. And one of the verticals that came out of that was education. And so Help Scout is a help desk software built for SaaS companies. We had all these education companies, and when we dug into it, they're using it for like a bursar's office and all these sorts of like individual use cases where they need like a shared inbox. It's like, oh, wow, we never even thought about that really as like the primary use case. And so we spun up a landing page that didn't talk about like support tickets and didn't talk about customers. We talked about students. We talked about these things, right? And so you can take that exercise and then feed that into your marketing to make it really resonate too, right? Because I think if you're going out with the same generic message, it's not going to resonate with that audience. But suddenly if I have a landing page where I'm showing Harvard and BU and all these schools that are already using the platform, it's way more likely I'm going to be able to get more of them. And so I also think that's a much more compelling test that people will probably be interested in funding. Say like, hey, education stays on for 50% longer and pay us 30% more. So we want to spin up this campaign, get alignment with sales around it. And I think like then you're very focused in terms of what you're doing.